Chinese-Russian air cooperation has NORAD's full attention, and it's something that we need to take very seriously. Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. I hope you're having a great day. Well, recently I posted a video featuring Kevin O'Leary, and Kevin O'Leary had suggested an economic union with the United States, but it was more than that. He actually had a lot of thoughts about our national security and securing our borders. And I think that that is a very important topic to cover here. I just read an article on CTV News that really addresses this and addresses what Kevin O'Leary said about focusing our attention not on the Canadian-US border so much, but on the northern border. So I want to just go over this article from CTV News. It really hits home with what Kevin O'Leary was saying, and it's something that we truly need to pay attention to. So without further ado, let's go to that article and then we'll talk about it. Chinese-Russian air cooperation has NORAD's full attention. The head of North American Aerospace Defense Command said Chinese and Russian air cooperation in the Arctic has NORAD's full attention. Those two countries for the first time staged a joint patrol in the Arctic near the coast of Alaska last July. U.S. General Gregory Galat told the Canadian press in a year-end interview that it potentially takes decades for two nations' militaries to reach full integration at a level like the U.S. and Canada. We are seeing it right now as coordinated, meaning that they can safely operate in the same area, but not near the level of integration that Canadian forces and the U.S. forces have, he said. As they continue to operate up there more, it certainly has our attention, and it is something we watched very closely. NORAD's strategic competitors, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, have had an unprecedented level of transactional coordination back and forth between them, really for the first time, he noted. Canada has been on the outs politically over the past year with U.S. officials for falling behind its NATO pledge on defense spending. Well, that's a conflict that will only ratchet up in 2025 as Donald Trump assumes the presidency. Galet said this incident highlighted the deep ties between the two militaries. 2024 has been an outstanding year for Canada to U.S. military-to-military relationships, he said, pointing how the CF-18 and the U.S.'s F-16s and F-35s coordinate to deal with the July incident. The Canadians just happened to be operating out of Elmsdorf Air Force Base in Alaska and were able to switch to the NORAD role and respond with us. That you can only do if you have years and years of fully integrated training. He said there was a slight uptick this past year in Russian activity alone, with one notable incident in late September when Russian bombers were spotted off Alaska, though not into American or Canadian sovereign airspace. When the F-16 fighter moved to intercept one of the bombers, it maneuvered too close to the U.S. aircraft. One of the fighters acted in a very unsafe and unprofessional manner, which to me was surprising because that is not what you expect from a professional Air Force, he said. But he said, despite that, the challenges NORAD faces with Russia is that the country is increasingly able to threaten America from further and further away, which has NORAD focused on building out its ability to detect threats. General Galat, who hails from Arizona and assumed his role at the top of NORAD this year, said the two nations need to beef up their Arctic presence through more exercising and campaigning. That's because forces that rotate into the cold north need to become accustomed to the challenging and frigid conditions for times of crisis. Weeks ago, he traveled to Cold Lake, Alberta, which he joked lives up to its name, where he flew a CF-18, a Royal Canadian Air Force aircraft, being modernized as a bridge for Canada to transition to the F-35. But he still hasn't been to the high north and is arranging a trip to Nunavik, Northwest Territories, likely in February, to better familiarize himself with operations there. His Arctic trips have consisted of the Alaska side so far, where he has been surprised by the harsh conditions. The vast space there makes up more than half of NORAD's area of responsibility, and the large distance between bases makes it a challenging environment for aircrew responding to Russian aircraft. He said the U.S. and Canadian forces are eyeing spending more time operating at the far extremes of the Arctic come 2025. He also noted that the U.S. is hosting Canadian pilots who will eventually fly the F-35s at Elmson Air Force Base outside of Fairbanks, Alaska for training. The plan is to show them that operating and maintaining a fifth-generation fighter, especially in the Arctic region, is very different from a fourth generation fighter that we have with the F-15s and the F-16s and the Canadians have with F-18s, he said. We are already starting that now to help speed up the transition. This was reported by the Canadian press first on December 30th, so yesterday. After I read this article, I thought back about the Fox interview that Kevin O'Leary did a couple of days ago, and this kind of highlighted what he had to say. So why don't we go now to a portion of that interview, and then we'll talk about it.
Resources Canada have, the U.S. needs, particularly power and water. But there's something else. We've been talking about the border between Canada and the United States. That's not the problem. The Pentagon is worried, and has been for decades, about the northern border where China and the USSR are.
Well, clearly he misspoke. The USSR doesn't exist anymore, but he's an old timer just like me, so sometimes we do things like that.
And we had NORAD decades ago, but China was a nothing burger back then. Now they're a serious problem. And I think in this kernel of an idea, and yes, maybe it was a joke to start, there is something great here to be done, because if you figured out a way to put these two countries together, it would be the most powerful country on earth, the most powerful military on earth, the most powerful in resources. And no adversary anywhere would mess with it.
Well, I think he's right there. And, when I got to thinking about it, yes, I know that I have a lot of conflict with people when I talk about a union with the United States, because in my mind, it's just, it's going to happen eventually. But a lot of people don't think that way. They have a very emotional response to it, and they would never like to see Canada merge with the United States. But what about this economic union? I've spoke previously that I thought that in the short term, it might be a good idea, but maybe it would actually work in a longer term. Now, I wouldn't want to see a bureaucracy over and above our own bureaucracies pop up as a result. But think about this. If we could eliminate the U.S.-Canadian border and we put our resources into the military, let's say we had a joint military, let's say we renamed it the USC, the U.S.-Canadian Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, that kind of thing, and we can put our resources on the northern border or the northern extremes. We're already integrated to a certain extent, but what if we were just fully integrated? And what if we integrated other parts of our federal governments, like the Border Patrol? So if we eliminated the Canada-US border and we put those resources into the ports and the airports, that would save a lot of money, and it would also have an effect of securing all of North America, not just Canada or the US, but all of the Canada-US dynamic. I think that would work as long as we didn't put more of a bureaucracy over and above our two nations. Now, it wouldn't be something that could happen overnight. Obviously, it would take a long time, and we would probably need to bring somebody like Elon Musk into Canada once he's finished with Doge in the US to really eliminate a lot of the waste that we have in Canada and to really cut down on a lot of our bureaucracies here. But I think it's something that we should look into, because now that I think about it, and in light of a lot of the things that have I've become aware of in the last little while, I'm warming up to this idea more and more. And I think that it might just be the best way for Canada and the US to move forward. So not a political union, but an economic union, such like the European Union, which I'm not really fond of, but it's bilateral. So I've heard it spoken about as a BLT and not a sandwich, but a bilateral labor and trade agreement. So the borders are essentially eliminated between Canada and the US, and we can move back and forth, but we still have our own countries, our own nations. But we integrate certain things like certain police functions, the military, and obviously the border security, immigration, and customs. So we would obviously have to integrate our laws as far as immigration goes, and I think move forward that way. And I think that's something that we should really look or move forward with and look at a lot more closely. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you think. Put your comments down below. And while you're at it, please like this video, share with your friends and on social media. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell notification so you never miss another video. Also, please join me on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Pacific time for my live stream on both YouTube and Rumble, where you can join in on the conversation. Finally, if you want to get your Canadian firearms license, which you need to own or purchase a firearm in Canada, I teach the required courses. So if you reside on Vancouver Island and you want to take a course from me, there are links in the show notes of this video where you can sign up for one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.